Good evening, and welcome to the USC Master of Professional Writing Student Faculty Reading Series. I'm Tom Rastrelli. I'll be your host tonight. Our theme tonight is Sunny with a Chance of Sig Alert. As we settle in now for the reading, please silence your cell phones, and there's food in the back, so help yourself to food or water at the end. Stay around and chat. Restrooms are through the arches, through the archway that direction. And a special thanks to Ruby and the staff here at Vroman's for hosting us. Please, if you have any books that you're needing to get to read, please get them tonight and show them our thanks for hosting us here tonight. Tonight, with this Sunny with a Chance of Sig Alert, we're thinking about Los Angeles and what it's like to live in LA, what our seasons are like. And we don't really necessarily have seasons, but we have traffic. So I asked our readers a number of questions having to do with these topics, our seasons and our traffic. So tonight, our first reader is Trisha Chambers, and she is in her second year with a fiction concentration. Her favorite LA season is summer because of free movies and concerts in Old Town and days at the beach. I asked everyone what their craziest LA traffic story was. So Trisha was once stuck in a traffic jam on the 5 early in the morning, and she noticed that there was a cat frantically scrambling to get out of the tire frame of the white pickup truck behind her. So she signaled the driver to pull over, and he finally did, and the cat was injured but still alive. So that was her freaky traffic story. And you may not know that Trisha likes to tango. Ladies and gentlemen, Trisha Chambers.
Thanks, Tom. I have crazy for TV. I have always loved TV. It started with reruns of Andy and Barney, Lucy and Mr. Mooney while eating cheese sandwiches, and Lipton chicken noodle soup at lunch. In 5th grade, I started memorizing the TV guide, even though I was not old enough to watch 75% of the shows that were on in prime time. In 7th grade, I discovered the Nielsen ratings, which, ever the future businesswoman, I started tracking to make sure that my brother and I had advance warning if Buck Rogers went on the critical list. By high school, I started seriously entertaining the idea of writing an episode of Remington Steele, or Family Ties, or even creating my own show. When I started the MPW program last year, I decided to immerse myself in my childhood dream by becoming a television extra. My thoughts behind this idea were threefold. One, I could experience a production firsthand and maybe see the writers rework a scene. 2, I could network for potential job opportunities. And 3, I can meet like-minded TV people, okay, like-minded guys. It was with great excitement that I showed up for my first day on the set of the crime show Numbers. Now, you have to understand that coming from a corporate environment and having been responsible for million-dollar budgets, I was keenly interested in seeing how a production worked. After checking in, I was sent to holding, which consisted of a series of tables under a tent in the middle of the studio lot. At the center was a buffet table, and behind that a food truck. Stepping in line for breakfast, I heard the tall FBI actor in front of me order an omelet with spinach and bacon and cinnamon French toast. At my prior employers, breakfast would have been day-old bagels once a month. My friends and family all tuned in to watch my big debut, a scene of me walking to my car, a business suit gray Mazda 3. But to my embarrassment, the only one who actually made it in was, in fact, my car. I think my Mazda may have actually been the murderer's car. Apparently, I'd have to work on my crossing, which is extra speak for fake walking across a park, a campus, or a lobby. But I was hooked and having fun, so I kept going, and I showed up on the set of ABC's Flash Forward, where I would be playing a patient. As a non-union extra, you have to bring your own costume, so I listened patiently to the recording the night before, but did not hear any details about what to bring. As a newbie and a businesswoman, I thought this would be a great opportunity to network with people on a new show. One of the regular extras spread the word that we were going to probably have dinner early and quite possibly at the Disney commissary. Having worked in marketing for over 10 years, I pride myself on the ability to network with just about anyone. I imagine myself chatting with other writers and executives over dinner and establishing some good contacts for the future. And this all may very well have happened, but for the fact that we changed into our costumes before dinner. And my costume was a white hospital gown with blue diamonds, a fluffy pink robe, and matching ultra-soft pink slippers. I would describe the actual walk over and the dinner itself as breezy. I'm ashamed to admit that not even my stellar networking skills could overcome the indignity of wearing my bathrobe and nightgown outside. It also didn't help that there were only 5 patients and the rest of all the extras were in FBI suits and jackets. As I stood in line behind an executive who could have been Simon Baker's twin, I kept silently wishing for pants. The good news was that I did make it on the show this time, albeit as a rather blurry patient in a hospital bed. But I remained undeterred as pilot season began, and I was cast on a new children's program as a parent watching a school play. Usually the shows want me to wear muted colors, but in this case, they want a bright one. So I was sent to wardrobe along with Will, an actor from Carlsbad, who was sporting a mustard bandlong tucked into navy blue Sansabelt pants. He emerged from wardrobe as Mr. Rogers' disheveled brother in a burgundy cardigan, khakis, and loafers. On our way back to the set, Jen, our wardrobe mistress, pointed Will out to her 3 fellow seamstresses, stating, "Doesn't he look like he could be TJ's father?" TJ being one of the young stars of the series. And a chorus of, "Oh my God, yes, absolutely, and he'd be perfect," punctuated his blushing face. The production assistant or PA placed us together in the last row of seats. As soon as he sat down, Will started shifting his weight from the right to the left, causing his wiry red hair to bounce back and forth on his head, like Willy Wonka frantically looking for a lost Oompa Loompa. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "I need to talk to the director," he squawks like a nervous macaw. He pulls at the saggy knees of his pants, again first the right, then the left, revealing white tube socks stuffed into his borrowed brown dress shoes. Sensing his anxiety, I suggest, "Why don't you talk to the PA?" No. It has to be the director. You see, I have a speaking role. I've just been cast as TJ's father." Fortunately, the PA called action, and Will is forced to spend the next half hour in the audience robbed of his big break. We shot some basic applause scenes before moving on to a more complicated scene, which required the young actors to do several takes, giving Will ample time to share with me that he's been an actor for 20 years. He still lives with his mother in Carlsbad, but he'd move up here in a second if he could just get a job. And that Ridley Scott wanted him to play an astronaut in some sort of space movie, but forgot to leave his phone number on the voicemail. When he in turn asked what I did for a living, I said that I was a lawyer in hopes that he might back off a bit. I actually have been one, but... "Well, you're a lawyer," he said. I nod my head yes. "You know, I really respect lawyers," he says. I nod my head again, silently wishing that the young thespians on stage could just get it right so I could get the heck out of this seat. He starts pulling at his pants again and then leans all the way forward, resting his left elbow on his right knee. His neck is twisted so unnaturally back at me that I'm reminded of my cousin's parrot who would nervously peck away at its own back feathers whenever she was gone for more than a day. "Yeah, I really respect lawyers because I had a restraining order taken out against me last year. I wonder, is it too late for me to join as a co-complainant?" "Yeah, I had to hire a lawyer. Yeah, she was really smart." I respond as I peer over the side of the risers and contemplate how long it would take to recover from a broken leg by jumping off of the top rope. "Yeah, well, you know, my ex-girlfriend asked for the restraining order." Again, I wonder if she would have defined the relationship as boyfriend-girlfriend or stalker-stalkied. "Yeah, we were members of the same cult." In that instant, my life is an extra flash before me. Number of times on air, 1.5 if you count my car. Number of networking opportunities, 0. Number of eligible men, 0. Number of crazy men from cults, 1. I'm pushed back into the present by the PA finally calling lunch, and as we file out of the theater, he shouts over our excited chatter, "Hey, we'll take an hour, but remember your neighbor because they're your husband or wife for the rest of the day." Right on cue, Will gallantly steps back to allow me to pass by and says, "After you, my dear." Staring into his hopeful but lashless eyes, I think, There's got to be an easier way to break into TV. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trisha, for that delightful LA story. I was one of probably the 3 people who watched Flash Forward, and I wish I had known I would have looked for you. By the end of the first season, I was calling it Fast Forward, which is why it didn't come back for a second season. It's a blur. Just a special thanks as well tonight to Damon Dunbar and the staff at USC for videoing all of our reading events. You can find us online. The USC MPW program has a YouTube channel. So if you would search MPW USC in YouTube, you'd find our channel, and you can see any of our readings, and eventually you will be able to see tonight's as well. And also a special welcome to our faculty members who came tonight, Dinah Lenny and Prince Gomovius and Tim, who will be reading. And I don't think I see anyone else, so thank you for coming out and supporting us tonight. Our next reader is Orly Minizad, and Orly will graduate in May with a nonfiction concentration. Her first car was a 1995 Lexus, the color champagne. She makes an effort. She doesn't have any horror stories about driving in LA, but she said she makes an effort not to drive when she knows her dad is on the road. And you may not know that Orly needs a job. Ladies and gentlemen, Orly Minizad.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everybody. This is a very short essay that I've dedicated to my nieces and to my sister, and they're here in the audience today. This is called Children of the Cornucopia. My older niece, Shaya, has a tendency to lure me out of a sweet, unemployed slumber by hurling herself on top of me. Make me breakfast, she says, as I try to shoo her off me like a housefly. If you don't feed me, I'll starve, and Mommy will be really mad at you if I die. She brings her sun-kissed colored face closer and challenges me with her flaming brown eyes. Do you want me to starve to death? Is that what you want? I roll out of bed, open my left eye, then my right, trying to adjust them to the light. I find my glasses and walk down the stairs like a hungover zombie as Her Royal Highness follows behind with arms akimbo. Hurry up, I'm so hungry, you're so slow, gosh. I contemplate putting some NyQuil in her food, calm her down a bit. But still, I figure, this beats waking up to my mom vacuuming at the crack of dawn, and my dad blasting the Iranian national anthem on the radio, as if he's getting ready to round up the troops for revolution in his pajamas. Meanwhile, my youngest niece, Rojan, wrapped in a purple robe, toenails bedazzled with Hello Kitty glitter, and unruly curls framing her face, struts down the stairs in all her diva glory. Carry me, she says, as she spreads her arms, waiting for me on the last stairs. I scoop her up, clutch her to my hip, and set her down on her designated spot at the breakfast table. Rojan has a sweet tooth, or sweet teeth, and eats nothing that does not include sugar, syrup, or chocolate as its main ingredient. After a long negotiation over the child-sized breakfast table embroidered with faded flowers, I convince her, or better yet, she convinces me, that she will eat a waffle under the condition that every crater is filled with maple syrup. The great part of being an aunt and not a parent is justified irresponsibility. I'm allowed to bend the rules, let them stay up and watch iCarly episodes, vouch for them when they claim to be too sick to go to school, sneak in chocolate chip cookies or two in their lunch boxes full of fiber this and protein that their mothers so self-righteously packed the night before. I'm comforted by the fact that despite all this, I will not be the one their therapist or parole officer will blame for their delinquencies. After all, which parent would trust a 20-something-year-old recent college graduate who lived on dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and reruns of the Chappelle Show to properly feed and care for their children? But here I am in the kitchen, using half a stick of butter, 2 eggs, a slice of radioactive Velveeta cheese, and toast buttered on each side to make Shaya's favorite fried egg sandwich. She thanks me as she expertly aims a sandwich to her mouth while balancing a book that weighs more than she does, and video chatting with her BFF on Google, and checking the weather on her iTouch, all at the same time. Later, she'll ask for a pale thistle, a devil's horsewhip, or a late spider orchid, all healing herbs the warrior cats in her novel recommend for your basic feline diseases. Back in the kitchen, I take the waffle out of a toaster, place it on Rojan's favorite Mickey Mouse plate, and pour a generous amount of maple syrup, but not generous enough. There's no syrup in this hole, she points. I grab the bottle of maple syrup and pour until her waffle is barely visible under the amber-colored goo, and she nods her head, satisfied. They happily munch on their food while I use the downtime to curl up on the couch and recuperate from the shock of waking up before 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. My earliest memory of a childhood morning is 4 glasses of chocolate milk neatly coupled on our breakfast table back in Iran. My brother, sister, and I drank them quietly without ostentatious display. I relate this memory to my mom as an adult with a malicious intent to highlight her poor parenting skills and offer an explanation for the source of my unhealthy addiction to chocolate. She told me to get lost. I then went to my sister, who 11 years my senior played a significant role in my upbringing. Do you know how hard it was to get chocolate milk in Tehran? She asked. It was a loaded question, one that signaled an answer that was to humble me mute. Post-revolution Iran presented a culinary problem. Food was not in ample supply, nor bought at the kind of Trader Joe's store like at Trader Mohammed's. Families were granted coupons which limited purchases for basic items such as milk, sugar, rice, eggs, and most coveted of all, chocolate milk. If you wanted chocolate milk, my sister recalls, you'd have to be the first in line at 5 in the morning with 30 other people. Even then, you risk coming home empty-handed. So you're welcome. An appropriate response would have been, wow, I wasn't aware of the obstacles you, dad, and mom faced to serve us, simple breakfast. You're really awesome, thanks. However, I went with the inappropriate response, which was, so basically, you really went out of your way to promote cavities and childhood obesity. She also told me to get lost. While there was scarcity of not just food, but resources for education and entertainment in Iran, my nieces have all at their disposal a cornucopia of prepackaged meals of cheese, crackers, and meat. At least 7 channels would cater only to them. Game consoles, state-of-the-art laptops, iPods, iTouch, everything, to the point where I'm wondering, in my very non-expert opinion, that fear someday they'll abandon real books for electronic ones. If maybe they're surrounded by too many things. It's not that I was deprived as a child in Los Angeles or in Tehran. I went to school, did your basic macaroni arts and crafts, wrote an occasional rhyme poem, played Nintendo, and eventually had access to all the chocolate milk in the world without having to send my sister off into the wilds. But I definitely did not harbor the kind of creativity and intellect my nieces do. It may be genetics, or it may be because I wasted a good part of my impressionable years in religious Jewish school after moving here, where they rebuked modern advancements and frivolous games that were distracting a woman's domestic education. Shaya and Rojan, however, are already more advanced and accomplished than I was at their age, or even now. They're athletes, writers, poets, scientists, engineers, used car salesmen. They've managed to sell me little people made out of toothpicks, homemade oven mitts, anything, fur balls, whatever, ball of yarn. They're confident, opinionated girls who don't settle for no, or I told you so, or aren't you old enough to make your own breakfast? They're curious and pose questions that require a thorough Google search for answers. Answers I should probably know by now. I don't know if animals are ticklish. I don't know where water comes from and how it ends up in the kitchen or in your shower. I don't know. They've outwitted me so much that any attempt to win some respect or authority has failed immensely. Do you know how hard it was to get chocolate milk in Iran? I try. My aunt didn't go to Starbucks and buy me organic Horizon chocolate milk. Who cares? Was their unanimous reply. And they're right, who cares? those days are as foreign and irrelevant to them as payphones and library index cards. The end.
Thank you, Orly. Did she do a good job? Yeah? That's great that your nieces are here. Our next reader is Beatrice Moosley Bennett, and she is in her second year with a poetry concentration. Her first car was the Honda that she got when she arrived in LA. It was a wedding present. She came from a city where she didn't need a car, so driving was a drastic adjustment. Her favorite LA season is fall because of the light. Being from Northern Europe, Paris, she also enjoys LA's long summers. While driving a former French minister to USC for a lecture, bad traffic and rain forced her to slalom through the neighborhoods of South Central. And on that night, the minister kept saying, "Are you sure we're going in the right direction?" And you may not know that living in LA, the only thing that she really misses is North African cuisine. So Beatrice Moosley Bennett.
Thanks, Tom. Metamorphosis of palm trees. So, like earlier generations of English intellectuals who taught themselves Italian in order to read Dante in the original, I learned to drive in order to read Los Angeles in the original. And that's a quote from Rainer Banham. Car talk. Maybe you'll write a novel. I cannot write a novel. I have no imagination, no talent to put together stories. Even recounting is painful. But the drive is long. Why not entertain the fantasy? It gives us something to be witty about. It's harmful. Well, almost. About what? I don't know. You just have to find a catchy title. Like what? The Metamorphosis of the Palm Tree? A singular? There's so many palms here. Why not a plural? It could be dangerous. It is dangerous. But I can't refrain myself. As a result, I get somewhere and I don't remember a thing of my trip. Autopilot. Horses know the way. Do not need to be led. How about power horses? Smart car? Mine does not qualify. It's all dirty, not so comfortable, but runs smoothly enough to let me dream, think. Street riding? A new genre in itself. With one hand, I dig in my bag, a pen, not this one. Even driving, I cannot write with any pen. It has to be the one. Got it, notebook. Here it is. Providential red light. I scribble a couple of lines. Green light. While holding the wheel with one hand and a knee, I keep writing. My next car will be an automatic. Shifting is impossible when you only have one hand available. Slowing down to catch the coming red light, the Mercedes behind me honks. Hateful gaze in the mirror. Sorry, got to jolt down another idea. Yuba City, AP release. Quote, a man who authorities said appeared to be driving while using his laptop computer died Monday when his vehicle crossed into oncoming traffic and collided with a Hummer. After the crash, California Highway Patrol officers found the victim's computer still running and plugged into the cigarette lighter of his 1991 Honda Accord. End of quote. It is now illegal to text message while driving. The law does not say anything about pens or keyboards. Bumper to bumper, as the expression goes. The van ahead of me is beat up. I read, quote, I'd rather be snorkeling. One never goes without literature in a traffic jam. Bumper stickers, plate holders, stickers. A few minutes and you know where the kids go to school, how well they're doing, how many souls in the family, including gender and pets, political and religious beliefs or disbeliefs, favorite sports, road service. Cars are transformed into the codex of our lives. Quote, Le monde n'est pas exactement le même quand chaque objet a deux noms différents. Nancy Houston. Translation. The world is not exactly the same when every object has two different names. 405 North, between Venice and National exits, or maybe National and Santa Monica. Off the crack of the asphalt, a palm shoots out. A tiny little thing, a bonsai of a tree. Green leaves, brown stem, it's all there. Alone in the middle of a 10-lane freeway, indifferent to all, sucking the sun, like nothing in the world could stop him. The power of nature over man-made, the revenge, a reminder of where we live. Her Geyser, who was the main character in Max Bookfresch's book, The Man in the Hole Scene. Her Geyser wrote a note to himself, quote, Europe and America move 2 centimeters away from each other every year, end of quote. A fact among many for him, a puzzling question for me. Do my worlds grow apart? Does the gap widen? To live in, to be home, to feel guilty all the time. To whom, to what, to pledge allegiance. Stranger everywhere. Familiar strangeness. Familiar foreignness. Being familiar with the fact that something is foreign. Where are you from? BC, and that's before crossing. I was already a magnet to lost or simply bored souls. Riding bus, subways, or trains, the seat next to me was never empty very long, and the first excuse, weather, delay, incidents, was a good enough reason for a fellow passenger to strike a conversation. 10, 20, 40 minutes later, I knew it all, joys, trials, and tribulations of an anonymous life, of a face I'll never see again. It got only worse when I started to fly. It was then hours stuck over continents and oceans, listening to lives. Hence the chills going down my spine, every time somebody turns around in a line and asks the innocuous friendly question. France, I try to be as stern as I can. Oh, really? And where in France? The South? No, Paris. I always dreamed to visit Paris, one day maybe. But with the euro the way it is... At that point, the conversation can go two ways. General remarks on the state of local economy or unraveled traveling fantasies. Before I have time to breathe, I'm listening to the litany of all the places she wants to visit whilst she can. If I was brave enough, I would recommend a hefty volume found on the shelves of the local bookstore, The Places You Ought to See Before You Die. Instead, I listened to the account of her brother-in-law's honeymoon on the Côte d'Azur. Is it how you pronounce it? Her semester abroad in Scotland. She preferred to play it safe. She never had good grades in foreign language. And her best excuse to stay home. I saw on the news there were some troubles over there. By that time, I'm ready to check out, but the line does not move. Le lieu idéal est le lieu où il est le plus naturel de vivre en étranger. Italo Calvino. And that's a quote from Italo Calvino. Translation: the ideal place is the place where it is the most natural to live as an alien. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. For those of you who are MPW students in attendance tonight, there are many spots left to read at the remaining readings this year, and there is a sign-up sheet on the back table there, so please feel free to sign up. Our next reader is Whitney Bratton, and Whitney is in her first year with a fiction concentration. As far as she can tell, LA has only 2 seasons, hot summer and cold summer, and neither are Chicago winter. And that's all she cares about. Her first car was a '92 Pontiac Sunbird named the Beast. It had the unusual quirk of being able to control the door's power locks by hitting the rear defrost button. She says that the secret to dealing with LA traffic is to live downtown, That and don't own a car. And you may not know that Whitney studied at the same school that J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter, attended. And that would be the University of Exeter, not Hogwarts. So, ladies and gentlemen, Whitney Bratton.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everybody. This story is called Dark, and it is a fiction piece. One summer night, the year Mom was pregnant with baby Dawn, the whole family, Dad, Lynn, Neil, and I, gathered in the family room to watch The Wizard of Oz. Trying to ignore the 90-degree humidity, we draped ourselves across blankets on the floor around the couch where Mom rested, her stomach stretched like a beach ball beneath the soft baby blanket she was knitting. Outside, the crickets and katydids chirruped loudly, competing with Dorothy as she sang about rainbows and bluebirds. I lay propped on my elbows on the floor, next to my younger brother, Neil. I wore my silky blue summer nightie, sweat soaking through the back of it. I was jealous of Neil, who wore only shorts, but Mom insisted that even though it was hot, I still had to wear my pajamas. Our eyes lingered, still aligned on the phosphorescent afterglow of the television screen for a moment before we realized the power had gone out. No one said anything for a second, then Neil gave a shout of excitement, and we all started chattering at once. "The power's out! The power's out!" Neil cheered. "What do you think happened?" Mom asked Dad. "Oh man, the movie," Lynn grumbled. Dad got up and went to check the circuit breaker. Mom put down her crocheting and heaved herself off the sofa to feel her way to the hutch for candlesticks. I'd never seen our house so dark. Not even the green VCR light peered across the carpet to glow off our bare feet. I crept over to where I knew the couch was and huddled close. Neil grabbed me and hugged me, pretending to be scared. "It's so dark, I think I'm going to go crazy," he shrieked, giggling. I pushed him off, complaining, "Stop it, Neil, it's too hot." Only Lynn sat silently in her chair, trying to blend into the darkness. She'd been quiet and unfriendly ever since starting junior high last winter. She never wanted to play in the sandbox with us anymore, or have squirt gun fights in the backyard. Neil and I had almost given up on her, but then every once in a while she'd cheer up all of a sudden and ask if we wanted to play Spud or build a fort in the bushes lining our backyard, and we'd all play as if nothing had changed. "Alice, would you get me the matches from the kitchen, please?" Mom asked me. "I know where they are." Neil jumped up and raced into the other room. I crossed my arms. I didn't want to go in there anyway with all the lights out. In the heavy mugginess beyond the open windows, there was a sudden flight of lightning across the heavy sky. The backyard existed for a split second, drawing our eyes in unison. The vegetable garden looked flat, the fence posts like crooked gravestones. I flinched and felt Lynn jump nearby, but stayed silent. I wiggled closer to her chair. Neil ran back in from the kitchen, matches in hand, shouting boisterously as he crashed into Mom's legs and clung there. "Did you see that? Mom, did you see that? Mom, do you think there's going to be a thunderstorm?" Mom lit a match, and the room reappeared around us. The thunder caught up with the lightning then, and we covered our ears as a bone-shattering crash filled the room. Lynn and I screamed together, but Neil screamed the loudest. His scream went on even after we'd all stopped. Mom said his name in her warning voice, so he stopped. I giggled. The wind swelled then, and the house creaked. The roof felt awfully thin. I hugged my knees and curled tighter. Mom lit a second candle off the first. The golden light warmed her face from below, twin sparkles dancing in her glasses. Dad came up from the basement with a flashlight. "Everyone okay up here?" he asked. When we nodded, he went on. "Must be a line down somewhere." We were all listening. Mom arranged 2 candles on the mantelpiece, leaving a squat red one burning on the hutch. Dad flipped off the flashlight. A mysterious thrill shivered in my chest as our shadows danced in the flickering light. Another wink of lightning flared once, then vanished. Neil screamed again, but no one else did, so he stopped. Mom sat down and pulled him up next to her. He leaned over and petted her belly. "It's okay," he told the baby. "I won't let anything hurt you and Mommy." Dad sat down on the couch. I wanted to be close to Mom. I shifted so that I could lean against her legs. She wore a cotton maternity dress, and I could feel the prickles of her calves as I ran my hand across her skin. Neil climbed over to be between the two parents. "It's all right, Alice," Mom stroked my sweaty head. "Thunder is just the sound of the angels bowling." The light flashed again, silent, warning. Then the rain came down. "Did we close the windows upstairs?" Mom asked Dad. He turned his head as if listening to something distant and then shrugged. "I'll go check." A low growl of thunder answered him, and Neil buried his face in Dad's shoulder. "Don't go, Daddy," he pleaded. "The thunder will get you." "Thunder won't hurt you, stupid," Lynn told him. Dad raised his eyebrows to her. "Lynn, would you run upstairs and check to see if the windows are closed?" "What? I'm not going up there!" Lynn crossed her arms. Lightning flashed again and highlighted the dark gap leading out of the gentle candlelight to the kitchen and stairs, like a mouth leading into a dripping, evil world. "Lynn, please go close the windows." "The rain is going to come and get everything all wet," Mom said. "Why me? It's dark," she argued. "I don't want to go up there alone." Dad picked up the flashlight from next to him, his other arm wrapped around Mom's shoulders. "Just run up and close them, hon. It'll only take a minute." "It's dark," she repeated. "Lynn," Dad's voice was big, "do as you're told." She huffed and got up. "If I'm going, Alice has to come too." She grabbed me by the elbow and lifted me to my feet. "Hey," I struggled. "Dad said you had to go." "Alice, go with your sister." But there's..." Mom sounded tired. "Please, sweetheart, just do as your father says." "Come on." Lynn snapped on the flashlight and dragged me away. "No," I fought. "I don't want to go up there. It's dark." There was a flash of lightning, followed more rapidly by thunder. The rain was pounding down now. "Alice!" Dad's voice threatened of a spanking. I grabbed Lynn's hand and we hurried from the room. The beam from the flashlight lit a tunnel through the darkness ahead of us, and we went around the corner, the family room vanishing behind us. The rain gushed down around the house, filling it with a white, vibrating noise that made everything else seem quiet. The gutters sang with water, cascades of raindrops running off the eaves. We were in the kitchen now, peering out the front window to the flickers of front yard, illuminated by lightning. The asphalt that had scorched our knees that morning, where we'd drawn a sidewalk chalk maze on the driveway, lay beneath a pock-marked puddle that slid away from the house like a receding wave toward the street drains. The poster board sign Neil had nailed to the box elder tree to advertise our lemonade stand was flapping furiously in the wind, fighting to get free. Lynn pulled me along after her, grumbling. "They make me do everything. It's like I'm their personal slave or something." Her hand was crushing mine. She was scared too. That's why she was so angry. I huddled closer, wishing I could be angry too, instead of afraid. "Do you think our house will blow away?" I asked. I'd once had a dream a tornado was coming down our street like a freight train off its tracks. "I don't hear any tornado sirens," she answered. I listened. The rain drowned out most of the noise from outside, but the wail of siren was nowhere to be heard. I relaxed a little. Thunder mumbled above us. We started up the stairs, but Lynn paused and turned back, shining her flashlight around. "What is it?" I asked. I was behind her. The empty kitchen behind us was like a bottomless pit waiting to suck me back. I moved up beside her, my other hand gripping the sleeve of her tie-dyed t-shirt. She pointed her flashlight out the front window into the streaks of rain. Outside, the yard flashed blue again, and I saw what she was looking at. Her bike. The cherry red 10-speed mountain bike she bought with her own babysitting money stood in the driveway like a forgotten horse, drenched in the rain. "Crap," she said. A whoosh of wind made the house creak around us. I imagined us shifting on the foundation, breaking free of the nails or glue or whatever held us down, and the whole house flying up into the sky. "Don't go out," I said. "It's metal. You'll get struck by lightning." The wind rustled again, and lightning bounced around in the clouds above our house, illuminating the yard as clear as day as a gust knocked her bike over onto its side. "Crap!" She jerked free of my hand and started down the stairs, but I held her sleeve tight. "No, Lynn, don't go out there. Lightning will get you." The wind caught the edges of the screen door and made a whistling howl. She hesitated, her eyes on the door. I tugged at her again. "Come on, we have to close the windows. The rain is coming in upstairs." It was true. A cool draft whispered down the stairs from above. Bam! A gunshot of thunder exploded right above the house, dazzling our ears. We grabbed each other and cowered down on the steps. It was the loudest thunder I had ever heard. I thought that a bolt had hit our house, or a tree had crashed over onto the roof. From the family room, we heard a blood-curdling scream. For a second, I thought something awful was happening to my parents. Then we heard Neil's faint giggle. Lynn and I hugged each other, holding our breath, waiting to see if the sky would do it again. Maybe we should go back, I whispered. Yeah, that was loud. Come on, Dad will do it. At that, Lynn straightened. Dad's already angry. She clenched my hand. I didn't know what to do. I looked out the window at the fallen bike. The wind made the windows rattle, throwing pebbles of rain against the panes. Lynn nudged me. Besides, he has to take care of Mom and Neil. She cast a last beam back at her mountain bike before turning it upstairs. Let's go. The beds are going to be all wet. The room Lynn and I shared was closest to the head of the stairs, so we went in there first. I climbed over the unmade pink sheets on my trundle bed and shut the window overlooking the front porch. All across the yard, the treetops dipped and swayed, the rain gliding across the street in veils. The fat drops made the driveway look as if it would be broken into rough gravel bits. Next, we went across the hall to Neil's tiny room. Lumps of clothing dotted the floor. The small, hard shape of Legos left imprints on our feet as we picked our way through the mess. I climbed onto Neil's bed and closed the windows looking east, toward the highway. The traffic had stopped, a few headlights creeping forward. The road was streaked red with brake lights. Look, Lynn was at the other window, pointing down at our side yard where the ditch was overflowing with water. I went over to her. Looks like a river, I said, squinting down in the darkness to where she was pointing. The lightning still flickered, but it stayed up in the clouds. I traced the flow down to the sewer at the street corner of our property. A small lake hid the drain, silver leaves dotting its edges. Maybe it will stay until tomorrow, Lynn hoped. We could go swimming in it. Or canoeing, I suggested. It's not that deep, dummy. Lynn stared down at it. That would be cool, though. A cool draft touched the back of my neck, and I shivered, looking behind me. Neil's closet gaped open between the bed and the door to the hall, weird shapes on the floor casting long, clawing shadows. Lynn climbed down. Come on. She led the way and I followed, running past the mouth of the closet, almost stumbling over a video game controller left lying on the floor. When we were in Mom and Dad's room, something snapped in the walls. The light came on. The alarm clock on Dad's bedside table flashing 12 a.m. The ceiling fan began slowly turning over our heads. Downstairs, voices exclaimed, and Neil cheered. I looked at Lynn, who had paused with one hand on the open window. She smiled, almost disappointedly. Our normal world was back. Our adventure left us in the safest room in the house. Monsters never came into Mom and Dad's room. Lynn shut the window and locked it. I closed the other one, standing on Mom's rocking chair to reach. The air in the house was fresh and damp, the summer's day rinsed away by the heavy rain. The lights flickered out again, the fans whirring, slowing to a deeper pitch. But the power held, came back on. Lynn looked out the window at her bike, lying in a puddle in the streetlights. I climbed up next to her. My finger felt the edge of her t-shirt, and I slid the cool cotton between my knuckles. Lynn smelled like Dove soap, like a wet body after a bath. I liked it. I wondered what you thought I smelled like. Across the horizon, thunder rolled away like a long, unwinding ribbon. It'll be extra clean tomorrow, I offered, like when we first got it from the store. She nodded, but still looked wistful. I just feel bad for it. All alone out in the storm. I was supposed to take care of it. A rhythmic thumping started up the stairs. We knew the sound of Dad's approaching. He paused at our room, then came down the hall and found us standing in his bedroom. The movie's back on, he told us. I didn't think you'd want to miss it. Lynn flicked her hair out of her eyes, the look of gentle sadness vanishing like lines shaken from an Etch-a-Sketch. Do you think the power's going to stay on? We'll just have to wait and see. The storm is moving away now. I think we'll be okay. I climbed down from the chair and skipped over to take Dad's hand. My bike's in the driveway, Lynn told him. I forgot to put it in the garage when Mom called us for dinner. I'll bring it in when I take out the trash tonight, Dad told her. I followed him as he led the way toward the stairs. You were some very brave girls, he told us as he took the flashlight from where Lynn had set it on his bureau. I'm proud of you. I glanced back at Lynn, who stood up a little taller, even as she gave me a haughty look. Dad squeezed my hand, and I smiled.
Thank you, Whitney. For those of you who've never been to one of our reading series, we are the USC Master Professional Writing Department, and the Master Professional Writing is a creative writing degree. It's multidisciplinary, so we study fiction, nonfiction, poetry, screenwriting, playwriting, cross-genre, mixing, all sorts of things. So if that sort of thing is interesting to you, many of us here are students or faculty. Feel free to talk to me afterwards or anyone else here. Just ask around and we'll be glad to tell you more about our department. Our final student reader for the night is Megan Christopher. And Megan will graduate in May with a nonfiction concentration. She failed her driver's license test twice. On the third try, it was over so quickly she knew she'd failed again. Eventually she passed, and in college got her first car, a 2005 Mitsubishi Lancer named Serenity. Her favorite LA season is spring when the jacarandas are in bloom. And if you read her blog, there's probably not much you don't know about her. Do you want to say your URL? Okay, she'll say it when she gets up here. But if you don't read her blog, you might not know that she's a second-generation Angelino, born and raised in West Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, Megan Christopher.
I'd like to set the record straight that it was actually on my third try that I passed. I thought I'd failed because it was over so quickly, but I didn't. And for the interested, my blog is at meganchristopher.net. All right, so this piece is called Someone to Talk About. One summer, when I was 19, the French invaded. They had been planning their attack on the neighborhood for over a year, ever since they bought the house next door. It had been 15 months of construction and destruction, of plumbing problems and pouring concrete, of Saturday work schedules and early Sunday morning wake-up calls. In my Los Angeles, the seasons were defined by Santa Ana winds, brush fires, rolling blackouts, and fallen jacaranda blossoms, though my particular street was free of what I thought of as Southern California snow. It was the hottest part of the summer when the new neighbors arrived, that time when our ancient air conditioner couldn't keep up with demand. My neighbors never had last names. If they introduced themselves, they became Jackie, or Fiona, or Todd, or Todd's wife. I knew them by their archetypes: the Jewish mother, the nosy Russian, the musician, and his spouse. There was a man down the block I knew only as Paranoia Guy, thanks to his impassioned speech about the need for neighborhood watch one winter when there were rumors of houses being robbed. Rumor was the only reason I ever saw my neighbors, the only reason they paused outside their personal bubbles to chat, and the gossip fueled by the goings-on next door had sustained them until the very day that the newbies were due to move in. Fiona wanted to know everything about everyone, and likely it was from her that my mother found out the new neighbors were French. Faux French, my father liked to say, since they were possibly from Algeria, according to Fiona. They definitely spoke French. Everyone was sure of that. It was the house that had attracted so much attention, whether by design or just as an unfortunate side effect of life on a dull street. They had built from the ground up, and it was my opinion that the final product wasn't any better than what had been there to begin with. In 1989, the year my family moved in, the house next door was already a wreck. One of the earthquakes had left cracks in the earwax-toned stucco walls, and strange cactus-fern hybrids grew in patches across the brown lawn, barricaded by tufts of king crabgrass and the occasional dandelion. By contrast, our house, white woodside paneling and blue trim, positively sparkled. The passage of time was marked by the storefront at the end of the block, which had, in the 19 years I'd lived there, been a Japanese toy store, Asian fusion restaurant, sex shop with nipple-shaped hats in the window, Noah's Bagels, shoe store, cell phone outlet, imitation boutique, sunglass hut, hair salon, another shoe store, and finally a bright yellow boxing gym. In all that time, the house next door remained unchanged. An old man named Irv lived in the rundown house. He kept the balls and frisbees that flew into his backyard, might have had a cat once, and lived alone. He only came outside to pull crabgrass by the roots, usually in a tatty brown bathrobe and mismatched slippers. With infinite patience, ignoring the futility, Irv would stoop even further than he usually did, select a spot on the ground seemingly at random, and yank, dropping the weed into a plastic bag like a collector of seashells on the beach. I would say hi if we were outside at the same time, but never more than that. Irv had a brown face like a wrinkled walnut, yellow stubbed teeth, and wisps of white hair that clung to his scalp. If he had a life before, it was certainly gone by the time my family moved in. There was a girl my age who lived down the block, and for several years, Annalie and I would play in the attic above her garage, sell lemonade on the sidewalk at $1 a cup, and feed the chinchillas that Annalie's brother kept in cages in his room. We were best friends. We saw less of each other around middle school, and though neither of us moved away, by the time the new neighbors were due to arrive, we hadn't spoken in 7 years and hadn't laid eyes on one another in 5. Once in a while, Annalie's mother would drop by our house, trap my mother in conversation, and brag about her daughter's accomplishments, but she might as well have been describing a stranger. I couldn't remember if there was a reason I'd forgotten Annalie's phone number, only 4 digits different than my own. Some days I felt like walking down the street and knocking on the door, but after 7 years, I didn't know what to say. Sometimes I had a hard time remembering Annalie's last name. When I first moved in, the neighborhood was all elderly Jewish couples, aside from Annalie and her family. Though news traveled fast, people in the neighborhood tended to move in and out with such stealth that I wouldn't realize I had new neighbors until an unfamiliar face opened the door to get whatever mail the mailman was unable to shove through the slot. Then Todd moved in across the street. According to the guy at Baskin-Robbins, he was Gwen Stefani's brother. Todd played guitar and had yearly Halloween parties that rocked the block until 3 a.m. My mother told me the faux French had a baby, and she had met the au pair who spoke very little English. Todd had a baby, I thought. At least, I was fairly sure the baby I'd seen once or twice was his, though by that point the kid could have been walking. There were no other children on the block as far as I knew, not since Annalie and I had grown to adulthood. So the baby-having faux French owners of the house were still a mystery, and everyone on the block wanted to know their story. After all, they were the people who had built the White Castle. My father called it that, though I still thought of it as the Irv Mahal, the nickname we'd given the monstrosity next door while it was still under construction, when it seemed as though the house would never live up to the amount of money spent on it. It grew into a square white fortress, only lacking a moat. It did have a pool, a tiny pool that entirely swallowed what had been the backyard. The paint was so blinding that I prayed it was primer, but after a few weeks of continued sewer work, the bright white square was covered in a patina of brown mud. A few weeks after that, and the frosted glass fence went up, effectively walling the strange new people inside. Altogether, it wasn't much of an improvement. I never gave the old man who had lived next door practically my entire life much thought, though periodically my mother or I would wonder out loud if he were still alive. The last few times we saw him, pulling crabgrass in his dirty old robe, he looked jaundiced, emaciated. We would say hello and go inside. My mother voiced the concern that Irv would die and no one would know about it. She knocked on his door, conferred with Fiona, who lived on the other side, and worried, but didn't know what to do. No one knew if the old man had any family. No one knew anything about him at all, in fact. He was more myth than man. I wondered if CSI would come to investigate when the inevitable took place. When Fiona told my mother that Irv had spent the last week or so of his life in a hospital, I had a sudden flashback to a Christmas some 10 years before, when Irv showed up at our door with a brand new soccer ball in hand. We never figured out why he suddenly decided to make the attempt, though years later I wondered if that was his one last way of reaching out, his one last hope at a connection with someone, anyone. I was sure my mother had invited him inside, though he politely refused, and later sent him home with a plate of cookies, but nothing changed. He went back behind his cracked and peeling walls, emerging only to fight a losing battle for his lawn, and whatever statement he was trying to make with the soccer ball that day never got across the great divide between us and our houses. Sometime after he passed, lawyers tracked down an estranged nephew, who sold the property as quickly as possible. My mother said the faux French paid the asking price, a whopping $800,000 for the dump that they knocked down on apparently prime real estate. They were house flippers, going to redo the place and sell it off after a year. But by the time the house was more or less complete, it was widely agreed they would never make a profit from it. The faux French had a baby who screamed and terrible taste in music. Grinding, thumping techno pumped from outdoor speakers through the walls in my bedroom, and I hated them for it. I couldn't blame the kid for crying. Fiona, Todd, even Paranoia Guy had made their introductions. My mother had spoken to the man of the house once or twice and spoke of going next door with baked goods, though she never did. They all wanted to make up for past mistakes. They wanted to start a new era on Gardner Street, but the new neighbors seemed determined to keep their distance. Even after they moved in, they were hardly ever home. Eventually, my neighbors returned to their private habitats, no longer hovered outside their houses to exchange the latest dish on the people who had announced their arrival with such fanfare. We smiled if we saw one another or waved hello, but didn't stop to chat. I wondered if anyone would know if something happened to the faux French family. How would we tell the difference between an extended vacation in Algeria and a catastrophic car crash? We all knew it was only a matter of time until the house was empty. We would come together again someday when there was someone to talk about, and until then we watched and waited and secretly hoped that someone, anyone, would notice if one of us were gone.
GLAAD, and Independent Spirit Award nominations for his first film, the documentary Dear Jessie, and directed the film adaptation of the stage play The Night Larry Kramer Kissed Me. He wrote and directed his third film, LOGGERHEADS, which premiered in competition at the Sundance Film Festival and received numerous awards, including the Grand Jury Prize at Outfest in Los Angeles. He recently completed an original screenplay, Kitty Hawk, a feature-length biopic about Wilbur and Orville Wright. He's developing a television series based on the book Miss American Pie by Margaret Sartor. Tim's favorite LA season is winter because he gets to laugh at his friends back in New York as they dig themselves out of snow and ice. So he especially likes this winter. He survived a crash at the intersection of Sunset and Benton in Silver Lake. His vehicle was T-boned and ended up on a sidewalk between a telephone pole and a brick wall. No one was injured, and the good news was the fire trucks were there in less than 2 minutes. Having had to call the police before at my apartment building, that's impressive, 2 minutes. You may not know that when Tim was 2 years old, he liked to watch Walter Cronkite. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Kirkman.
Okay. I'm going to take us off-road a little bit, by a few thousand miles east, but here we go. There are two types of friends in the world, those who will set you up and those who will not. My friend Stephen is the latter, or at least he had been until one evening after dinner a few years ago. He handed me a yellow Post-it note on which a name and a phone number was written. "I met this guy at a party," Stephen said. "You should call him." I'd known Stephen for nearly a decade. We'd become friends while I was working at his graphic design firm in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'd never told Stephen that I was gay. I never believed I had to. He just knew. And at the same time, he had never asked me much about my personal life, not out of any degree of homophobia. On the contrary, he was the kind of friend for whom this was just not a big deal, and at the same time, Stephen was also likely to find the attempt at matchmaking vulgar at best. He simply wasn't that type of friend until he was. And I found myself standing on the corner of Broadway and 50th Street with a yellow Post-it note in my hand with a stranger's name and a phone number on it. "Thanks," I said, completely ignoring the enormity of this gesture. I folded the note and stuck it in my wallet. This was 1999. I was single, living in New York City, and by this time I had acquired a tiny bit of notoriety from a film called Dear Jessie, a documentary I'd made about my relationship with the North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms. Now, before you get the wrong idea, I had no relationship with Senator Helms. Or I should say I had as much a relationship with him as any gay person had, which is to say I had an incredibly hostile, rage-filled relationship with him. My film had begun as an inquiry into the minds and hearts of the voters of my home state during the 1996 Senate campaign. It quickly evolved into a highly personal filmed letter to the notoriously anti-gay senator. I set out to travel across the state to try to find out how two boys, Helms and me, who shared so much in common, actually Helms and I, who shared so much in common, could have come to such different places. We were both born in Monroe, North Carolina, and been raised as Southern Baptists. We had been journalists and radio announcers and had even attended the same school. But I believed we had an even more significant similarity. As I say directly to Senator Helms in the film, for most of your career in the United States Senate, you've been obsessed with homosexual men. For most of my adult life, so have I. Dear Jesse ended up being as much a love letter to my home much more than a love letter to my, as much a love letter to my home as a diatribe against an enemy. And as a result, viewers caught a glimpse of some details of my personal life, one of which was the fact that my last relationship had ended badly. I hadn't felt much like going out and dating, but some time had passed, and now I felt ready to get out there again. It was around this time that my equally single friend Caitlin introduced me to an exciting new social experiment called internet dating. It's great, she said. You get to go bypass all the awkwardness and go straight to the substance. And you don't have to buy any drinks in order to find out you're not the least bit interested in this person. It sounded great, but it occurred to me that knowing too much about someone before you've ever even met them might destroy whatever magic there is in the dating experience. It would essentially replace the first stages of romance. Those days of breathless excitement when you're learning new things about each other, sharing your life stories across candlelit tables, all that verbal foreplay. Caitlin stared at me a long time and then said, "How long have you been single?" I signed up with two dating sites, Swoon and Matchmaker. Swoon was the easy one. It required that I provide information in simple list form, which consisted of my basic physical characteristics, plus a few other details. Political affiliation, sexual orientation, favorite movies and books, and an attention-grabbing headline for the top of your personal ad. Mine was, if I had a pony, I'd ride it on my boat. I figured if anyone recognized this Lyle Lovett lyric, that was somebody I wanted to meet. I got one response. Matchmaker.com, on the other hand, was not interested in lists. Matchmaker wanted paragraphs, and they weren't kidding around. There were questions about dreams and aspirations, family and friends. I was asked to describe the perfect date, the ideal vacation, a time I was happiest, the greatest challenge of my life so far. It asked for opinions about drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. If you drank, how much, how often, which brands. I was asked to describe my vision of the future, my religious beliefs, and the word and sound I loved the most. It was like being on Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton right there in my living room. This was not an easy task, and it shouldn't be. When you get down to it, outside of a session of therapy, how often in our busy lives do we get a chance to sit down and ask ourselves questions like this? To really assess our lives, our futures, really get to the heart of who we are, what we want, who we think we might want to be with for the rest of our lives or for an evening. Who knew this odd new cyber phenomenon could be so probing? I answered all the questions, and throughout I strove for balance. I wanted to come across well, smart but not pretentious, witty but not straining, kind but not sappy, open but not naive. More than anything, I wanted to be honest, which was a challenge since none of us used our real names. It's true. In order to ensure anonymity, all members were required to create a username for his or her Matchmaker account. If you liked someone, you sent a message to Matchmaker, who then routed it to the person. No one would ever know your real name or your email unless you provided it to that person through the dating site. This is standard practice now, but at the time it was a whole new concept and strangely thrilling to be able to have this other self, an alter ego out there in the world dating and flirting online with strangers. It was really fun. And I chose a username that combined my profession, film, and my favorite spice, cinnamon. So Cineman was born, C-I-N-E-M-A-N. Finally, I'd finished the questionnaire, and it had taken me so long to finish. When I was done, I thought I was going to have to go back and check a new age bracket. Before I posted my profile, I was given the option to upload a photo of myself. I opted not to do this. First of all, I don't photograph well. And secondly, I don't photograph well. I took a deep breath, clicked on a button, and posted my profile, and then I waited. In the meantime, I filled out another form, which asked what type of person I was looking for. Given everything that had happened, I was primarily looking for a guy around my age who was alive. But I filled in the form as best I could. Height, weight, hair color, eye color, skin color. I didn't care much about that stuff. College degree? Yes. Drinker? Absolutely. Smoker? Fine. Drugs? No. Well, maybe one. Religion? No. Well, maybe one. There were very few deal breakers, in my mind at least. There would certainly be hurdles once I met him, but things we could get over, like does he hate dogs or speak excessively about his exes? I could think of only one honest-to-goodness red flag, the reddest of the red. Does he vote Republican? That was a deal breaker. A matchmaker search engine revealed a list of potential candidates. I pored over them and then cautiously sent out a couple of messages of interest. Much to my surprise and relief, I got responses. It was thrilling. Someone actually, more than one person, was interested in me. And after exchanging a few messages back and forth, I suddenly had a new problem. Some of these guys wanted to meet in person. Fortunately, my undergraduate degree in graphic design had prepared me for this moment. During senior year, my topography professor, P. Lynn Middleton, asked the class to design a book cover. She gave us strict parameters, including the book size, title, author's name, and told us we would be limited to 2 colors and 2 typefaces. Are you joking, we asked? We begged for freedom. What kind of sadistic exercise is this? P. Lynn just smiled, pushed her red glasses up on her nose, and walked around the room chanting, "Limitations free you, limitations free you." But in the end, after we stopped fighting the parameters and started working with them, it was some of the best work of the semester. I knew that without limits, with no limitations, a designer can sit in front of an endless list of typefaces and colors paralyzed by indecision. You can end up staring at a blank page, an unfinished project on your desk. Limitations free you to be creative. They give you boundaries that keep you safe, but they also make you work a little harder. I called upon P. Lynn's wisdom when I set out to meet these guys in person, and I set up some rules. Rule number 1, no alcohol. I'm not opposed to alcohol. I love alcohol. I've had enough experience to know that a little alcohol can go a long way. I also know that a little more alcohol on a bad date can go a long way toward obscuring the truth that I'm not really even attracted to this guy in front of me, but what the hell, why not have one more? It's not like I like this guy. Sometimes an extra cocktail, delicious as it might be, is just a mask for loneliness. And other times it's a face for lust. In the perfect dating storm, it's both. And at some point in the evening, the masks and, in all likelihood, some clothes would fall away. And sure, that was fun until it wasn't. And then it was really not fun. So no alcohol. Rule number 2, no food. This one probably seems a little harsh to some of you, but I arrived at this one really easily. I figured if the date's going well, but the food is bad, it could reflect negatively on whoever chose the restaurant, thereby creating a really bad first impression. Not to mention, if you're like me, you're going to get cranky because you didn't eat because the food was bad. Conversely, if the date is bad, but the food is delicious, it's even worse because you'll be looking across the table and thinking the whole time, gosh, I wish I could sit here and enjoy this meal without you. But instead, I'm going to shovel this in and get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. A third scenario was unthinkable. Bad date, bad food. Who needs that? And then the final scenario seemed really impossible. Good date and good food. I decided better forego the whole food thing. Finally, rule number 3. I would meet you on Saturday or Sunday for coffee between the hours of 3 and 6 in the afternoon. I figured if someone said he didn't like coffee, I wouldn't go out with him anyway, because everybody knows that when you say you want to go for coffee, it isn't about the coffee. A coffee date is low risk for everyone involved. If there's little or no chemistry, no harm done. No significant amount of time lost. And the best part of all, to-go cups. So, with the rules in place, Cineman started dating. I won't reveal too many details, but suffice it to say, over the course of several months, I had a lot of dates. There was a smart, funny cyclist from Pennsylvania, a nice-looking, though gym-obsessed Cornell graduate who studied hotel management. Nice guys. Oh, I forgot one. A cranky socialist with big, clunky glasses and Epstein-Barr syndrome. Nice guys, all catches, really, but no sparks, no chemistry, no real connection. Then there were other guys whose profiles seemed interesting, but who I never got to meet. We would exchange a series of messages to each other, and then they or I would just disappear back into cyberspace. Or the other kind who you could never pin down for a date. One guy in particular had captured my attention. His questionnaire indicated that he worked in theater. His online name was Katz. Yes, Katz. His profile was funny and smart and self-deprecating without being whiny. He was thoughtful. We seemed to have a lot in common. Katz and I exchanged messages many times in an attempt to meet, but our schedules never seemed to synchronize. I never even found out his real name. I broke my rules only twice. Both times were disasters. The worst being a date with a waiter who worked in a restaurant called Barrymore's in Midtown. He said he could only meet me after work and begged me to go to dinner with him. He seemed funny and nice on the phone, so against my better judgment, I agreed to have dinner with him at the Film Center Cafe on 9th Avenue. After a torturous dinner, during which he ranted about his horrible parents and the downfall of modern civilization and the terrible food, he followed me out to the street. As I waved down a taxi, he said, "You're never going to call me, are you?" I didn't even try to summon up a morsel of the polite Southern boy I was raised to be. "No," I said, and climbed into the cab. It wasn't his fault. I broke my own rules. I went home that night feeling weary. I'd met a lot of guys, most of them genuinely nice. I'd never gone out with anyone more than once. Clearly this internet dating wasn't working. Or maybe it was. Maybe it was too much to expect to meet someone, fall in love, and settle down based on an online questionnaire. And is that what I'm really looking for anyway? A long-term relationship, a partner in life? Maybe all I wanted was sex. Well, but if that were true, that would be easy enough to find. I was a gay man living in New York City. Wait, maybe that's it. There are too many of us here. In any given city block in Chelsea, there are probably more gay men than in the entire state of North Carolina. Now that's an idea, I thought. Maybe I should move back to North Carolina. So what if most of the gay guys there are closeted or married to women? At least my odds would go up. Actually, I don't even know if that's true. I'm really bad at math. I started to wonder if I was doing something wrong. After 6 months of trying, I decided I was done with internet dating, at least for now. I got home around 9 o'clock and logged onto my Mac. There was yet another message from Katz, wondering when we might get together. I don't know if it was my frustration from the evening or this larger frustration with my life, but I composed a reply to that email that to this day makes me cringe. It was something to this effect. "If you really want to meet me, rent my movie. It's called Dear Jessie, and it's all about me. After that, if you're still interested, give me a call." Or I pressed send, and that was the end of my Matchmaker account. A few weeks later, I was in my office one afternoon making notes about a film project I wanted to work on. When I took a break to check my voicemail at my apartment, there was a message on my machine from a voice I didn't recognize who said, "Hi, my name is Drew Barr. You don't know me, but I think we share a few coincidences that at least merit a conversation." He left his phone number and said he hoped I would call him back. Drew Barr. The name sounded familiar, and that's when it hit me. I opened my wallet and pulled out a faded yellow Post-it note. It read Drew Barr, and there was his number. The guy Stephen told me to call 6 months ago. I picked up the phone and dialed. He answered. "Hi," I said. "I guess Stephen gave you my number." "Who's Stephen?" Drew asked. I told him. Drew said he had remembered meeting Stephen. His sister and my sister were college roommates, he said. But that's not how I got your number. I'm Katz. I was stunned, but also confused. How did Katz find my phone number? It isn't listed. I didn't give it to him. And was it even possible that the guy whose name and phone number I'd been carrying around in my pocket on a yellow Post-it note for 6 months is the same guy I had already found online? I rented your movie, he said. I can't believe you actually did that, I said. Me either, he said. I wrote you back at your Matchmaker account, but I got a message that your membership had ended. I asked him why he decided to rent my movie after receiving such an obnoxious email. I guess I wanted to see what I'd missed, he said. Drew told me that he liked the film a lot, and that while he was watching the end credits, he'd recognized several names in the acknowledgments, including his sister's college roommate, and a few others, and that later that week he'd gone out to dinner with his best friend Nick, and Nick's boyfriend Mackie, a filmmaker. He had told them about our unfruitful Matchmaker experience, and about my subsequent rude message that challenged him to rent my movie. Mackie, whom I'd known through the New York independent film world, said, Tim Kirkman, he's fantastic. You must call him right now. You're perfect for each other. Here, I have his number. Now here we were talking. We decided it would probably be a good idea to meet in person. I told him I could meet him for coffee between 3 and 6 on Saturday or Sunday, which is what we did. It was December and it was cold, but we wandered around the streets of the Lower East Side anyway, talking and sipping coffee from our to-go cups. 3 hours later, we said goodbye and agreed to call each other again sometime. It had been a really nice date. As I walked back home to 12th Street, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time, maybe in years. I had read Drew's profile. I knew so many things about him already, but knowing these things hadn't destroyed the magic. By the time we said goodbye, neither of us had felt the conversation was finished. I left feeling confident that there would be a second date. When I got back to my apartment, I canceled the plans I'd previously made for that evening. Instead, I ordered a delivery and curled up on my sofa to watch a movie. It was unusual for me to cancel plans at the last minute, but the afternoon with Drew had been so nice I wanted to savor it. It was a good decision. Around 10 o'clock that evening, the phone rang. It was Drew. He had tickets for a play the next night and wanted to see if I wanted to go. I said I'd like that. 9 years later, Drew and I got married in Santa Barbara in July in 2008. It's tempting to want to believe we were brought together by fate or destiny, that a series of coincidences clearly illustrate this to be true. It's evidence, proving that, without a doubt, we were meant to be together. But I think our story is more complicated than that. It isn't a story about fate or destiny. It's a story about the ability we have to be surprised and to surprise ourselves, each other, life. To trust a friend enough so that when she says, sign up for this website, you do it. To want life to be spontaneous and full of romance, but to understand that limitations free you. To be so frustrated and lonely that you send an obnoxious email without really thinking about how it's going to be received, and to dare to respond to that email by actually renting my movie and watching it, even though all you can think is, what an asshole. To pay attention and notice when a window opens, even if it's one on the internet. To be the kind of friend who would never set someone up with anyone, but to do it anyway. Thank you.
So, thank you, Tim, and to all of our readers as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And a special thanks to Ruby and the staff here at Vroman's for hosting us. Thank you very much. And next month, our reading series will be on February 25th. It's the last Friday of the month. Same time, 7:30. We'll be at Barnes & Noble at the Grove. Our faculty reader next month will be Janet Fitch, who is the author of White Oleander and Paint It Black. And our theme will be Cupid's Stupid. So please come out and join us next month. Have a great night. Enjoy the food.